Welcome to Team Futurism. Today we're going to do a quick follow-up episode from last week's podcast where we talked about the difference between Andrew Yang and Vivek Ramaswamy and why we were arguing that like Vivek is not pulling his weight as the Republican version of Andrew Yang. And we were kind of like doing that episode a little bit off the cuff, a little bit underprepared. We noticed that some of the YouTube comments somewhat called us out on that. But the YouTube comments in general, they were just so convincing and so beautifully and compellingly written that we are now fully Vivek 2024. And this is now a dedicated podcast to his success as a future leader of our nation. Devin, what do you say? Are you excited about this new turn that we're taking?
Peter, I couldn't be more on board. It was eloquently written comments such as this video exemplifies what a soy latte would say about Vivek running for president. I mean, how do you not just completely turn tail and get on this guy's team when his supporters are so poetic in the way that they think about, the opposition, man? I mean, it's so good. Yeah, I feel great. I'm a big Vivek guy now. I warmed up the podcast today by doing my vocal exercises. Ramaswamy is my mommy. Ramaswamy is my mommy. Ramaswamy mommy.
So you did a little bit of research on our new our new fan favorite over here, Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy. What were your takeaways and what was your general impression that you wanted to share?
What a weasel. What a little weasel, dude. It was like you were
unimpressed. In other words, unimpressed.
I was super impressed. I was super impressed that somebody managed to stitch together like the most I don't know, man. It was like a Republican think tank like baked this guy in an easy bake oven and then like overcooked him. That's not a brown guy joke. He's a dumbass joke, by the way, folks. Man, it's just nuts. Like there's so many things about the guy that I didn't like. I almost couldn't. I did find like one or two things that I could halfway get on board with, but he's just a talking point machine, which maybe explains why people were so incensed in the comments, because he is doing a version of Trump where he's speaking to the people that he knows are his base, and he's just using hot word like it's like he's like a Google like he's like an SEO engine, dude. Like he just knows all the little hot word buttons to push. But the problem is, Vivek, is that you contradict yourself a lot because you don't actually have a fucking policy platform. You're just aping every, version of the Republican policy platform that you've been able to digest into your goopy body. And it shows, because as soon as you watch a couple of his interviews back to back to back, he'll immediately start contradicting himself on pretty fundamental issues because he's just parroting talking points. Let me just stop there and allow you to, I don't know, interject, because I could go on.
Well, I mean, it is really interesting because like my opinion of him is that he is very, very, very good at what he does. The shtick that he has is dialed in and it's great. And I don't actually think that he's running for president. I think that he's running to be the next Ben Shapiro. I think that he was kind of like bored with like whatever finance he was going in that direction with his career. And I think that he is too much of an egomaniac to be like an anonymous person out there making money, He wants to be in front of the camera with like a large following, and he probably sees like Ben Shapiro or Tucker Carlson, and he was like, I like can totally run with those opinions. I can 100%. Say them more articulately, and if I do that on a platform like I'm running for president, like bam, I have my career pivot. And so my guess is, I mean, he's not going to win the Republican nomination. He's probably going to be a flash in the pan. Like, for example, Chris Christie has said this, but do you remember when Ben Carson was like leading the Republican race years ago, and before Trump overtook it? He might just be that, just total flash in the pan. And I think that Vivek is happy with that. I think that he doesn't want to be president. He doesn't have like he barely votes. He's barely ever voted. He clearly does not give a fuck about like America or maybe he cares about America or whatever. I'll give him that. But like he doesn't care about politics. You participate in the system if you care. Like that's just like the base bottom level. Participate if you care. And so he hasn't shown at all by his record that he cares about politics at all. He just wants to be the next Ben Shapiro. I would put money on that as like what he's actually gunning for. And he's probably going to be very successful in doing just that.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because one of the things that I was left with reflection-wise just on his general disposition and his kind of the way he's communicating, he's giving early Tucker Carlson. Like he's definitely gave me Tucker Carlson before Tucker Carlson became like almost like a meme of himself vibes. Yeah. That's a really interesting take, and I think that's probably something like shoot for the stars, land on the moon kind of situation for him, which I didn't even think about that, but you're probably absolutely right. And it is funny because as you're talking about Ben Carson, it just reminds me of the fucking carnival of Republican candidates that we had on the last go around, and like it's just the American voting audience is so fickle. It's just one. Well, who was that guy that do you remember the guy that just talked a little too loud? Like he kind of like yelled something at a press conference. He was like, and it was like it became a soundbite, and then like that what killed his chances of being president of the United States.
I forget who that was, but I absolutely remember that incident. Yeah.
Me too. I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy is one like pubescent voice crack away from like Republicans not feeling like he's tough enough to handle the job.
Well, I mean, that's Kyle Kalinski's critique of him is that he's a total beta to Trump. He's like in every way, he's just like Trump's beta version. And, you know, Kyle goes off about that. And I think it's a good point.
Sound off in the comments. Sound off in the comments, future fam. Now that we've got you all firmly roped in, tell us what you think about Vivek Ramaswamy being a soy boy cuck beta to Trump.
Yeah, no, and Kyle Kalinski makes a good case for that. I'm not going to like regurgitate it here, but there's one substantive-ish point that I do want to address that was a critique of ours in the comments last time. And it was that Vivek is going to be the one person who can unite all of America, right? Like,
man, he talks about that so much. And please continue, because holy crap, is that his hobby horse, like talking point wise.
Okay, so I think that this is a thing that like just because he said that, people have bought into it for some reason. But it's like the only people who have bought into it are the people who agree with his policies, and they're like, so why doesn't everybody just get on board with this? He says he's for everybody.
100%.
Okay, so like I actually responded to one of these comments in our comments on the last video, and I like just listed off just a handful of things that not only do Democrat-leaning folks or left-leaning folks disagree with that are core to his platform, but we absolutely viscerally loathe things that we think are just like immoral and like awful. And so, I mean, for example, he wants to this was in the news, I think today, he wants to like do away with like the H-1B visa or something like this. I'm not sure if do away with it, but he wants to like he hired people on this visa for his companies in the past, and he wants to do away with it. And he takes a very, very, very hard line on immigration. And he like goes,
I know that one's great.
Talking point of effectively like invading Mexico and putting our military along the border. We do not want to start a war with Mexico, or even like nobody who's even remotely left will tolerate that for even a second. And this is the guy who's going to unite us. Is like, give me a break. I could list off, more items like that. It's almost like on every level, even something like destroying the quote unquote deep state, that talking point, it turns off half the country. And then he wants to do it by like getting rid of 75% of the federal workforce, which, as Bill Maher called him out on, he's just pulling that number 75 out of his ass. Like that comes from nothing. He's just saying that,
I watched some of the Bill Maher. That was good. That was good TV.
It was pretty entertaining. What did you? Yeah, I mean, like even Bill Maher, who's like kind of
Insufferable.
down to
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go
to
ahead.
jump on board with some anti-woke stuff, and
Sure.
he'll kind of like be on board with a little bit of like sane Republicanisms. He is not a fan of Vivek. He calls him out to his face as somebody who
Yeah.
is just an utter novice, literally is just pulling policies out of his ass and
100%.
doesn't like none of the policies really cohere together unless you take them from the perspective of they're coming from what will appease the modern Republican base.
There it
and
is.
they're Trump light.
Yeah.
And this is the motherfucker who's going to unite America. Like, it literally is like, give me a break. Like, think about this for like 2 seconds, guys.
Man, I would, on the comment that you're responding to, could you possibly be referring to at Hawks7775?
Maybe. I don't know.
Wow. Wow, two perfect examples of the less someone knows, the less someone knows something, the more they think they know. Come on, guys, wake up and really look at the bigger picture. Vivek is what we need for both sides. Neither side is always going to get what they want. Hawk7775, you sound like Vivek Ramaswamy. A lot of meaningless aphorisms, my guy. Like, none of that means anything, right? Like, that's one of my big... that's one of the things that really bothers me about the guy is this hobby horse of unity, where he's like, well, we really need to unite the country under strictly Republican policies, like under a strictly Republican policy platform. I'm like,
exactly.
Man, somebody needs to touch base with this gentleman on the concept of unity and like what exactly it means. And I think what it is it's coming from this weird like mentality of like the United States government is under democratic control, and so the way that we reunite the country is by bringing people back together under reasonable Republican policy platform, which is just, I mean, that's my only mental gymnastic I can perform to get back to that to the sum that he's getting to. I don't get it at all, man. It reminds me of somebody that crammed for the SATs like 2 days before they needed to take the test. Like somebody that has like a pretty skimming surface level understanding of how to activate people emotionally, but really not a depth in terms of policy platforms that are synthetic and his own. All I hear him say is policy platforms that are just lifted from somebody else. And you can do that, but then you just become a fragile mosaic of other people's ideas. And there isn't anything to me that even I would love to hate the guy for being himself, but I hate the guy for being 25 other people. And that is the fundamental frustration to me. I always have some degree of respect for somebody who gathers the information, whatever, if they're annoying, whatever, Ben Shapiro, Bill Maher, these people are out there actually, gathering information, synthesizing their own opinion, being themselves about it. I don't get any of that from Vivek. I didn't, in all of the time that I spent listening to him speak, I didn't hear him say an idea that felt like his own the entire time.
Well, okay, so I will give him the one, which is his Ukraine policy. I think that that's his own because I haven't heard that come from anywhere, but it's also like the dumbest policy he has. And just to like
Nice.
have a moment where I think that like a relevant thing in the news happened recently about this. His policy very quickly is that he basically wants to be the one sole person who works with Putin and Xi Jinping to make it so that everything works out in the glorious America's best interest. Oh, and by the way, Ukraine doesn't really get anything that they want. Okay, can I like say a very interesting anecdote about this?
Please.
Just this week, I think in Politico, there was a big article about how Macron, the president of France, he was trying to do that dance for the first year or two, or the first year, I guess, of the Ukraine war, where he was trying to like, we're not going to be mean to Mr. Putin.
Oh, I remember this.
Work with him. I'm going to be the guy in Europe who is going to solve this crisis because I'm going to treat Putin with respect and I'm going to make this okay. He just hard pivoted on that because he realized, and everyone around him realized, Putin was just playing him, just totally playing him and 100%. Wrapping him around his finger, and he was just Putin's little puppet. And Macron, he's got his flaws and everything, but he's not an idiot, And there's no way that Vivek has some secret political talent that Macron doesn't have. You know what I mean? Like if Macron can't do that, who is the established, one of the most established world leaders, there's no way this novice guy could at all thread that needle working with Putin and Xi Jinping to get what's in America's best interest. I mean, come on. That I think is an interesting thing as an example of, at some level, what he wants to do has been tried at a very high level and very utterly flopped.
Yeah, and also what happened, I mean, I think it's really interesting that we're living in a political climate where we've got the Republican Party cozying up to our oldest and longest standing enemies in the world. Like we've had Trump cozying up to Russia on the last go around. We've got Vivek over here. It was one of my kind of points is he's like, we don't want to anger Russia and China. We want to have an alliance with them. First of all, Russia is on the verge of being a failed state. We don't want to ally ourselves with them at all. It's a bunch of, I mean, the Russian people completely different than the superstructure that is the Russian government, and frankly, Putin kind of even one more step removed from that as well. I don't think that's something that we need to get involved in allying ourselves with at all. I think that's something that we need to continue to pull back and step away from and allow it to fail on its own. That's crazy to me. Obviously, we have to have some kind of tacit peace with China because they're a huge power in the world, but also, I mean, there's a lot of indicators that China is going to suffer an intense demographic collapse within the next 50 years. They are, doing certain things that are mitigating their environmental disaster of a country, but it's really not going that well. It's still kind of full steam ahead and polluting the entire world with cheap crap. I just don't see us needing, as like the largest, most fertile, most productive country on earth, needing to ally ourselves with these people, unless you're kind of a little political cuck beta that doesn't want to stir the pot much and doesn't want and wants to make sure that everybody likes you. And that's a huge talking point for him is allyship with Russia and China, which is so cognitively dissonant from the political and like the geopolitical reality that we're living in. We don't, that is the last thing that we need. Also crazy because he's such a Trump boy, like it's very anti-America first, and just the idea of consolidating wealth and production in this country for the people of this country and solving the problems here. Can I just do a couple quick takedowns of this guy, of things that really frustrated me about him, and then I'm gonna leave you a spot after each of them if you want to comment. He wants to deport the children of illegal immigrants, so he wants to end birthright citizenship. That's insane. That's depriving potentially millions and millions of actual Americans that are paying into the tax system, that are contributing to society in a meaningful way, that are fully plugged into the system, that's ripping them back out of the system again. That is, to me, a very anti-American idea. Thoughts?
Yeah, anti-American. I don't think he'd even do this. And
yeah, you couldn't even do it.
I mean, if you do, it's interesting. Just a really quick headline note here for me on immigration is that Americans aren't having enough babies to sustain our population growth. We need immigrants. We need to somehow figure out a way to do it like smartly. But yeah, birthright citizenship and like the visas that are bringing over like some of the best and the brightest, those are not the places to even like, those aren't the edges that we want to start playing with.
No, absolutely not.
And even the crisis at the Mexico border, Peter Zion has talked quite a bit about how we're seeing like the last generation of people who are going to be able to make that journey in significant numbers, because I forget why, but it's something to do with the population.
Oh, great! There goes the comment section.
Yeah, well, I could maybe post a link in the notes on this, but something about the population demographics of the people who are coming to America from those particular places that are like flooding the southern border in 20 years or 10 or 20 years is not going to be so much of a problem just because of the demographic shifts happening down there.
Makes sense.
again, I wish I had like the charts up on this, but like if you look at like the numbers and the demographics, he makes a strong case for this being the case. So I mean, yeah, more immigration in general is going to be a long term a boon for our country, not something to be scared of. We have to do it right, obviously. There's a lot to talk about here, but
just a weird little piece of fat to try to trim, and it's really not fat at all. It's part of the T-bone steak, Vivek. Part of the American steak, if you will. Another insane talking point is that he's like, well, if global warming is a problem, we have so many more people die from being cold than being warm. And the whole thing that we need to do is make sure that everybody has air conditioning and plentiful access to fossil fuels. And I'm not making that up. That is something that he literally actually said like 5 or 6 days ago, which is such an insane little putting little pieces of string to tax on a board, like trying to string together like a way to escape like mental liability for climate change. Like, whoa, dude, insane. Please, thoughts?
Oh, hella stupid. There are grains of truth there, and I could kind of sort of steel man what he's saying. It is really interesting because there is this does bug me just a teeny bit that every time there's some sort of a heat wave and like 2 people die, it's headlines across the globe. It is actually true, and you can look up the charts on this. Way more people die from the cold than the heat. Way more. It's not even close. Totally. It's like crazy how many people die from the cold. And it's kind of obvious. I mean, like we live in California, so it's not a problem. But I mean, if you live in a place where it snows every winter and snows on the ground for 4 months, and if your electricity goes out, or if you are on the brink of homelessness, or like you're gonna die, you know what I mean? You can't live when the temperature is below a certain level, and like most of the globe suffers from like very cold winters. So anyway, that is actually there's grains of truth there. And this is something that oh God, I sound like such a cuck-lib to say this, but this is something that Republicans will do a lot, is like this news story is framed incorrectly. So I'm going to like say how this news story should have been written, and then I'm going to make a policy proposal that has nothing to do with reality at all, and it's going to be utterly insane. And so like they'll take people along with them even to a place that makes no sense because initially they did kind of correct the record. You know what I mean?
100%, man. It's just like the nuance of the climate change issue, the nuance of the ecological disaster issue, it's pretty thoroughly complex, right? Like we're not going to solve, the trillions of pounds of plastic crap that China pumps out. I mean, we could go on and on. Our country does it too. We're involved in polluting the shit out of all kinds of all kinds of ecosystems. I mean, the global temperature is a function also of that greater conversation, but it's too simplistic to reduce it to, if the world gets warmer, then all we need to do is this, because it's actually a more holistic and complete idea that we need to kind of be wrestling with, that we do have a footprint and an impact on the earth. And maybe it's not an emergency right now, or maybe it is. There's two competing sides that really have a lot of compelling arguments that we're doing okay or that we're on the brink of total ecological collapse. Either way, it's just a more complicated and nuanced conversation than we need to expand access to fossil fuels.
Yeah, I don't want to dwell too much on this because I could talk all day about this.
Oh, but God, okay.
I could say just one more point, which is that whole framing that he does, irrespective of whether or not he even like really completely believes what he's saying, that whole framing is an own the libs style framing.
Totally.
Right? That is not a framing of unite the country at all. Like, and who even cares what's true? Like, just to say this, like maybe he's right about everything or whatever. The framing is to own the libs. That's what he's doing. That is not a unite the country type of person. One more thing on this, and this does kind of bug me about people who are climate skeptical in one capacity or another, whether it's legitimate or not. Mm-hmm. We totally lose sight of the fact that there are communities in America that are directly harmed severely by coal plants that still for some idiot reason exist and other forms of pollution that we need to address those like immediately, and make
Yeah.
it so that like people in America aren't dying from lung issues or,
Yeah.
which is, I'm afraid the numbers on this, but it's crazy the amount of people that die from environmental pollution in some
Yeah.
capacity or another, or have like health impacts from it. Part of like, let's just like forget about climate change, like literally just fix those problems, and guess what,
Yeah.
as a result we will have less greenhouse gas emissions, and climate change will be fixed down the road because of changes that we can to replace coal plants with nuclear, whatever we got to do, you know what I mean? So there again,
Yeah.
there's a ton here. I feel I'm just like glossing over what I really could or want to say, but yeah.
I could really tear into it too. I'm gonna restrain myself
Okay,
because I've got a toilet paper roll of other shit to get through here.
hit me with a few more.
Um
Yeah.
okay, so man, okay, here's one, here's two. Okay, here's two. First one, a full pro-lifer, which I guess in certain ways is not a totally unreasonable policy platform, but he's full stop like child raped, you're carrying that baby to term.
I didn't know
Because
that actually.
yeah, man,
Really?
like he's like no matter what, full stop, I the child needs to be brought to term because it's the issue of a human life at stake, which there's so much cognitive dissonance involved in that thought process. Chiefly is that you give a shit about the human life until it comes out, and then people are like, well, but there's church organizations that can help you and blah 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 blah. How many kids are in foster care getting raped today? Right? Like let's just be clear-eyed and honest about the way that this system works, and how thoroughly it fails children that do not have a stable, awesome two-parent household, right? Like we do not have a government or a social services system that has a strong enough moral underpinning or enough money or resources to make sure that kids are safe when they're brought into this world by parents that maybe did or didn't want to have them here. And so our
Hmm.
best option is to save potentially a life from 18, 20, 50 years of mental and physical torture because they were brought into a situation in which nobody wanted them there. All
Hmm.
right. That is, we got to have that as a bigger part of the conversation, because it stops at, well, we need to bring this life into the world. And then there's some facile arguments of like, well, but there's services, for kids, for orphans, or for kids and for single mothers. And it's like, no, there's not. I could go deeper into that as my personal experience of a single child, of like an impoverished single mother, but I won't. Suffice it to say, I've had a very good inside view on the way the system works, and it regularly and routinely fails children that are brought into this world that don't have a capable household around them to support them. And so we have to allow women to choose.
Can I have one jump in on here? I can't not have an abortion comment.
Dig it. Get in.
So yeah, I'll make this super quick. But my personal take is, it really bugs me how much politicians play into the abortion conversation. I feel like it's really simple. And this is what Europe does: is basically it's between you and your doctor, and it's not a political issue. Full stop. That's it.
Right.
Done.
Yeah,
In a conversation, we politicize it too much, and it's to everybody's detriment.
totally.
But my real comment here is is that, tell me if Vivek doesn't strike you as exactly that Republican cliche of the guy who his daughter, becomes pregnant when she's 16,
Oh, sure.
17, and then like
Sure.
he's immediately like, oh, well, you absolutely have to get an abortion because this is going to ruin your life. That's a stereotype of Republicans, because they always do that. The guys who like vote most harshly pro-life also, by the way, have like four mistresses who also had
Right.
abortion. Trump, and then all their daughters have
100%.
also had. He strikes me to a T as that type of dude.
Oh yeah,
Who
because he's
I'd
because
really be
he's
a hypocrite about it.
I would love to, if any of you guys are here from the comment section from last time, talk about some stuff we said today, because last time I admitted that I had my head buried in the sand and knew very little of political reality. I was just voicing the zeitgeist of society, the things that I'd heard kind of rumbling in the distance. And then I did research on this guy and realized that he's a slick little weasel and that I hate him. And I would love to, legitimately, I will be in the comments this time. I will love to debate any of you guys on a Vivek policy platform that you like, because they're all bullshit.
I mean, he's got a couple of
He does have a few.
policy.
He's got a few that are good. I wrote those down too.
But Devin, does this mean we're not going to dedicate the pod to Vivek 2024? Are we not dedicating the podcast to him?
Aww.
I thought that was our whole intention here.
You're so right.
We've in the right direction.
Dude, we've run so far astray of the initial point.
You just gotta like tweak a couple of things. Quit being such a car salesman, snake oil salesman, and jump on board with like some actual like cool Californianisms.
Yeah,
whatever
dude.
That means.
Maybe try a soy latte or two. It might soften your disposition a little bit.
All right. Hey, well, we'll wrap it up there. Till next time. Hey, Vivek 2024. Here we go.
Ramaswamy mommy. Ramaswamy mommy. Ramaswamy is my mommy.